Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, Chapter 4, Hamsaguya prayers. So Daksha has just offered the Hamsaguya prayers. There are some prayers in some sacred texts. They weren't his own prayers, some prayers elsewhere. And he's offered them as a form of austerity in order to be empowered to have children. So the word Daksha means expert. He's expert in sex life. He's expert in producing the children. And he's a Prajapati, progenitor of the universe. So that is also his service to the universe. But even though he's already expert in sex life, his production was not sufficient. So he needed further empowerment. So he offered these Hamsaguya prayers on one special sacred place called Aghamarshana, the place which destroys the sin. And we just finished those prayers yesterday. So now the Supreme Lord is reciprocating with his austerity, and he appears before Daksha. So that is the passage we're going to cover now. He appears before Daksha. Daksha, having darshan of the Supreme Lord, goes into ecstasy. His senses are filled with the bliss of that darshan. He's unable to speak because of the bliss. And the Lord addresses him and explains a few things about his transcendent position. And after that, tells him who he can marry to be empowered to continue his work of populating the universe. And then the chapter ends. So the passage is from verse 35 to the end of the chapter, which is like, verse 50 or something. So we'll see if we can cover all that. I'm not going to read all the verses because it's just, a lot of the verses don't have commentary because they're self-evident, I suppose. So those verses which don't have commentary will not look so much closely at those. And then those that have commentary will look more closely at those particular ones. Okay, so the first thing that's described is the darshan that Daksha gets from his austerity. So let us look at that. We're just going to read the translation of these verses. This is the darshan of the form of the Lord that he sees. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who was extremely affectionate to his devotees, was very pleased by the prayers offered by Daksha, and thus he appeared at that holy place known as Aghamarshana. O Maharaj Parikshit, because of the Kuru dynasty, the Lord's lotus feet rested, O Maharaj Parikshit, best of the Kuru dynasty, the Lord's lotus feet rested on the shoulders of his carrier, Garuda, and he appeared with 8 long, mighty, very beautiful arms. In his hands he held a disc, conch shell, sword, shield, arrow, bow, rope, and club. In each hand a different weapon, all brilliantly shining. His garments were yellow and his bodily hue deep bluish. His eyes and face were very cheerful. And from his neck to his feet hung a long garland of flowers. His chest was decorated with the Kaustuba jewel and the mark of Srivatsa. On his head was a gorgeous round helmet, and his ears were decorated with earrings resembling sharks. All these ornaments were uncommonly beautiful. The Lord wore a golden belt on his waist, bracelets on his arms, rings on his fingers, and ankle bells on his feet. Thus decorated by various ornaments, Lord Hari, who was attractive to all the living entities of the 3 worlds, is known as Purushottama, the best personality. He was accompanied by great devotees like Narada, Nanda, and all the principal demigods, led by the heavenly king, Indra, and the residents of various upper planetary systems, such as Siddhaloka, Gandharvaloka, and Charanaloka, situated on both sides of the Lord and behind him as well. These devotees offered him prayers continuously. So he had a nice darshan. Next verses. Seeing that wonderful and effulgent form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prajapati Daksha was first somewhat afraid. That's interesting. But then he was very pleased to see the Lord, and he fell to the ground like a stick to offer his respects to the Lord. Next verse. As rivers are filled by water flowing from a mountain, all of Daksha's senses were filled with pleasure. Because of his highly elevated happiness, Daksha could not say anything, but simply remained flat on the ground. You know, we have a saying in the West, drop dead gorgeous. So the Supreme Lord's beauty is actually, it is unfathomable for the living entity in the material world. As I've been saying a lot these days, the living entity cannot conceive of a supernatural person because our experience of personhood is only informed by nature, the forms that are products of nature. So even when we hear the description of the Supreme Lord that's given here, we actually can't conceive of what it is. Just like I always tell that joke, not joke, anecdote, where a devotee from Africa told Prabhupada, Sri Prabhupada, so Krishna is black. And Prabhupada responds, yes, but not black like you. We can't conceive of the black color of Krishna. And the beauty of it is inconceivable. But it's clear from this description that one is stunned by seeing the beauty. Now, this is not true only for Daksha. Also, when Dhruva saw the Supreme Lord, he was stunned and couldn't say anything. He had to be empowered by the Lord's conch shell. The Lord took the conch shell and touched Dhruva's head, and he became empowered to offer prayers. Otherwise, he was not able to say anything, being stunned by the beauty of the Lord. So just note this, because it's going to be interesting how the Lord reciprocates with him, despite this seemingly transcendental experience of Daksha. All right, next verse, it says, although Prajapati Daksha cannot say anything, when the Lord, who knows everyone's heart, saw his devotee prostrate in that manner and desiring to increase the population, he addressed him as follows. Okay, so let's see what the Supreme Lord says to Daksha. So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Prachetasa Mahabhaga Sansiddhas Tapasa Bhavan Yashtadaya Matparaya Mayi Bhavam Param Gata. So this is Prabhupada's translation. The Supreme Personality of God has said, O most fortunate Prachetasa, son of the Prachetas. So you know the Prachetas are there. They were the 10 sons of King Barhishat. So Prachina Barhi, he was the one who hears the, what is that, Paranjana story, allegory, in the 4th canto. And Narada convinces him to give up the path of karma and embrace devotion. So he does that and leaves the kingdom while his sons were off performing the austerity. So when his sons came out of the water after seeing Vishnu, they saw that the kingdom was neglected. And anyway, we had told this story. So the Prachetas were burning all the trees with their mystic powers. Have you heard this story before? And for a fourth, it's coming here in the 6th canto described. They were burning all the trees. And then the moon god came down and said, don't burn all the trees, take this gift. So he gifted him a daughter, the Prachetas a daughter, and they produced Daksha. So he's called her as Prachetasa. He's the son of the Prachetas. Mahabhaga, he is a greatly fortunate person. Because of your great faith in me, you have attained the supreme devotional ecstasy. Yatradaya matparaya. Because through the instrument, through faith, and me, matparaya, through faith that is having its object as me. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita concerning faith, Shado Maya Ayam Purusha, that the living entity is composed of faith. He is Shadamaya. The living entity is Shadamaya. Shadamaya means replete with the faith. It's like sometimes we use the word Srimaya to refer to a lusty man who can only think of women constantly. It's called Srimaya. Or we refer to the Brij Bhaktis as Ragmaya. Their bhakti is completely composed of raga only. They're called as Ragmaya, the Ragatmika bhakti. And so here it's called Shraddhamaya. Krishna says Shraddhamaya. The jivas are composed or replete with or filled with faith. Shraddhamaya ayam purusha. And according to their faith, they invest in a particular object of faith. And according to that, they attain that. Right? So Krishna says this in chapter 17, verse 3. So the liturgy is composed of faith, and according to the object of his faith, he will attain that, which is the object of his faith. So one has to be careful. Because now that you attain that, he says you become what you invest your faith in. Whatever you invest your faith in, that you will become. So it's a little dangerous because you will become that which you have faith in. So here, yatradaya matpareya. Through faith, having Krishna as the object, Mayi bhavam param gata. You have attained param bhavam, the supreme bhavam. The supreme bhavam means, Sri Vishwanath says the supreme bhavam here means the highest conception of the form of the Lord. Our Prabhupada's translation here is you have attained the supreme devotional ecstasy, param bhavam, because of the faith that was congruent with that attainment. Indeed, because of your austerities combined with exalted devotion, your life is now successful. You have achieved complete perfection. So, samsiddhas tapasa bhavan. Through the austerity, tapasa, by austerity, you've attained complete perfection. So the Lord is very satisfied with his austerity. That's what he's saying here. And his faith that has allowed him to have the darshan of the Supreme Lord. Okay, well, more on this, but we're going to look at the next verse because they're together. Krito ham te prajanata yate syo brim hanam tapa amaksha kama bhutanam ya bhuyasur vibhutaya. My dear Prajapati Daksha, you have performed extreme austerities for the welfare and growth of the world. So why he has done the tapasya? Actually, everyone in this material world is a tapasvi. Tapasvi means one who undergoes the austerities, right? So everyone is actually a tapasvi. Tapasya means basically voluntarily accepting suffering for some higher purpose. Now, what is that higher purpose? That depends on who you ask. So if you're a materialistic person, the higher purpose is, make more money, for example, and get a higher position. So they perform extreme austerities for that. They get up before the Mangalarti hour also, go to work early to make money. They are tapasvis also. So in this way, everyone is doing the tapasya in the material world. Sometimes people do incredible things to get the girl or guy of their dream. They'll do crazy stuff. Tapasya. So everyone is a tapasya in this material world. What's one purport like this? Prabhupada is saying everyone is a tapasya. But what is the purpose of your tapasya? Tapasya is like if you want to, we'll use this language, the distinction between form and substance. So tapasya is like the form, and the substance of the tapasya is the desire inside of it. What is the desire that is informing that tapasya? And that is a distinction between a karmi, a gyani, and a bhakta, for example. All of them are tapasvis, but one is taking the form of heavy toiling in the material world to fulfill some material desire. The gyani also does a lot of tapasya, restraining his senses from sense objects because he wants liberation. And the bhakta will also do tapasya in order to gain the Supreme Lord's darshan, or his bhava, prema for the Lord. So all are doing tapasya. So the form of tapasya will look very similar. What distinguishes them is what's going on inside, the very self of the tapasya. Just like the body has a self, right? The body is gross, and the self of the body is actually the consciousness of the soul. So what is the self of the tapasya? The very self of the tapasya is the desire. What is your desire? So he says here, Pritoham te prajanata. So, O Prajana, the Lord of the Praja, because he's producing the children, lots of them. He said, I am very pleased with you. Why? Yate asya ubrahanam tapa. Because you are performing the tapasya to increase the population. Ubrehanam. That is the inner self of this tapasya. So the form is a lot of sex life in his particular case. That is the form of the tapasya. And the inner self of that tapasya is the desire to increase the population. Mamaksho kama bhutana. This is also my desire. The Supreme Lord says, this is also my desire. That what is your desire? That the population be increased. This is also my desire. And so, ya bhuyasur vibhutaya. Therefore, let this happen in all respects. So your desire to increase the praja, the living entities, this is also my desire. And therefore, I'm very pleased with you. Pritoha. Because you're also satisfying a particular desire of mine. So why would the Lord be happy with increasing the population in the material universe? So this is the question that Srila Prabhupada brings up in his purport. So we want to pursue that question just in brief. Why would the Lord be pleased to see the living entities accepting material bodies? Where the material body is known as the kleshada, the giver of misery. You know this verse is from Rishabh Dev's teachings. Who knows this verse? Nunam pramata kurutevi karma. Ya indriya pritaya pranoti. Ya nasadu manye yata atmano yam. Asanapi kleshada asadeha. I haven't quoted this verse in like 5 years. I can't really remember this verse. So Rishabh Dev was speaking of the living entities in this material world. Nunam pramata. He says they're crazy. 2022 has demonstrated that this is indeed the case. There's just like a very thin veil of civility in humanity, and it doesn't take much to remove it. And then our madness is immediately evinced or made manifest to everyone, for everyone to see. So Nunam Pramata, they're veritably crazy. Now, Mata means crazy, but Pramata means like veritably crazy, like very crazy. Why they're crazy in Rishabde's estimation? Nunam Pramata Purutevi Karma. Because they're performing V karmas. They're doing the V karmas. This is why they're crazy. I saw one Ayurvedic person that I interviewed on one of the podcast episodes. So he shared something on Ayurveda for what is the cause of pandemics from Ayurveda, according to Ayurveda. So it was very interesting post. Anyway, there's 6 causes of pandemic according to Ayurveda, apparently. And one of the main causes is the sinful activity of the living entities, which was astonishing. Because when dealing with, as is the case with most issues in the world, we only tackle the externally manifest, really symptom of a more remote internal cause. So if pandemic is the externally manifest symptom, its internal cause, according to this Ayurvedic post, is the sinful activity of the living entities. So collectively, humanity has been living in folly for many decades now. I know many of us, especially in the Western world, living well beyond our means and enjoying more and more objects which are destructive to nature or to lifestyle and so on. So I guess the collective folly of humanity is leading to some problem. And the external symptom is pandemic. I thought that was an interesting thing. So I forgot why I brought that up here. I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to explain Nunam Pramata Kurutevi Karma. So he says they're crazy because they're doing sinful activity. Kurutevi Karma, ya indriya pritaya apranoti. And why they're doing the sins? Because they have no self-control. The senses put a lot of pressure on us to act out, basically. It's very hard to resist. Of course, they were in the old world, the culture used to appreciate self-control. Whereas in this world we inhabit now, you get social credit for self-indulgence. And the more self-indulgent you are, the more you appreciate it even. You can become famous, or if not Hollywood famous, you can become Instagram famous at least, or TikTok famous, or whatever it is they're using, just by being self-indulgent and narcissistic. So, indriya pritaya pranoti. Just for the indriya priti, the sense gratification, basically, they're doing simple activity. I think this was crazy. Nasadu manye. I don't think this is very good. Nasadu manye. I don't think this is very good. Yata atmanoyam. Why? Because it leads to ashana pi kleshada asadeha. It leads to receiving a material body, one after another. And what is a material body? It is kleshada. It is giver of torment, kleshada. Isn't it? And Narada Muni is called Narada, right? Da means didati, like to give. So Narada is the giver of Narayana. And Narada, he gives the Narayana to the living entities. And here he says the body is kleshada. Bhakti is called the shubhada, right? One of the 6 characteristics of Shuddha Bhakti is shubhada. It is the dati, it is giving the shubha, auspiciousness in life. So here the body is called as kleshada, it gives the torment. And we have that on a daily experience on a daily basis. If it's not the gross physical body, then the psyche causing a lot of problem for us on a daily basis. So the question is here that Prabhupada wants to pursue. Why would it be pleasurable for Krishna? He's saying, I'm pleased here by your desire to increase the population. But when living entities take birth in material bodies, the body which is kleshada is giving so much misery. So how can that be pleasing for the Supreme Lord? So that is how Prabhupada wants to pursue this particular purport. So we want to demonstrate that a little bit here. Just one other point about this tapasya. We're saying tapasya is the form and the inner self is the desire. So everyone has to have some desire for something. And the stronger the desire, the inner self, the tapasya, the stronger the outer manifestation of, perseverance and willingness to embrace a sort of suffering for a higher purpose. Or say it in the converse, that willingness to embrace suffering for a higher purpose is contracted to the degree our desire is weak. There's like one time someone told Prabhupada apparently that Maya is so strong. And Prabhupada said, Maya isn't strong, your purpose is weak. And, very interesting, just food for thought there. So in Bhakti Yoga, we're supposed to also have a very strong desire. Now we hear anyabhilashita shunyam, that other desires should be 0. So other desires means like desires for, material enjoyment, desires for liberation. Shunyam, that should be 0. But the desire for pure bhakti should be strong. Anya abhilashita shunyam means that other desires aside from the desire for bhakti should be 0. Or say it in another way. When you have the desire for bhakti, I assume most bhaktas have desire for bhakti, but they also have desire for bhukti and mukti. Bhukti means they want to enjoy, matter. And mukti means they want liberation. They're tired of suffering. So that is also very appealing, let's be real. It's very attractive. If Lord Narayana came and said, I'm putting mukti on the table, it'd be appealing. So if those desires are there, then the desire for bhakti becomes weak. So you want a strong desire for bhakti. And as we're saying here, bhakti, the more abstract bhakti is, the less strong the desire for it. So when we say bhakti, it means we have to really specify what is our goal in devotional service. We are Krishna bhaktas, at least we're trying to be Radha Krishna bhaktas. So we have the desire for attainment of Radha Krishna Lila, for example. And we want to participate in Radha Krishna Lila from the vantage point of a particular love. Love as a friend, love as a beloved, love as a parent, and so on. And so the stronger there's a desire for that, then the willingness to embrace suffering for that purpose becomes manifest. Whereas it is saying that nowadays, contemporary devotees, we may not have, we've kind of been made weak by comforts of, life. As Queen Kunti herself says, Jaya Maishra Yashutashri Bear Edamana Madapuma, Na Eva Ariti Abidatum Vaitama Kinchana Gocha. This prayer comes after where she said, may the calamities come again and again, which, no, thank you. Won't be offering that prayer anytime soon. But may the calamities come again and again, because that means I can have your darshan. And in having your darshan, I no longer see birth and death. So a hypothetical question is brought up by our acharyas. If calamity is not a problem for you, then what is a problem for you? So she says, aristocratic birth, beauty, education, and wealth. These 4 are considered to be dangerous. right? Why? Edamana madapuma, because they expand madness. Edamana madap means the expansion of the madness. Madness here means pride. Pride. And because of that pride, naeva ariti abidaltumbai, one cannot feelingly call out to you because they're sheltered in these things. I have my position, I have my wealth, I have my beauty, I have my knowledge. You feel secure and you have some position. I also chant Hare Krishna, but I also have the other thing going on. So then it erodes the ability to feelingly call out to the Supreme Lord. Just like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta tells a story of a man who bought some popcorn. A lot of popcorn stories. I don't know, it's really strange because, oh my, was there even popcorn in India at that time? Anyway, a lot of popcorn stories. And man bought some popcorn to go meet one girl. While he was crossing the Jamuna, the strong gush of wind came and the popcorn was flying out. So while the popcorn was flying out, he said, Govindaya Namaha. Unto Govinda, my obeisances, I'm offering you this popcorn. This popcorn is for you. Actually, the popcorn was for the girl, but there was a strong gush of wind. So the service said, okay, Govindaya Namaha. So what is the feeling there? He not intended the popcorn for the Lord. And in some circumstance, okay, Govinda, you take the popcorn also. So of course, Lord will reciprocate with that, but there's no real feeling there. So Queen Kunti is also saying, when you're sheltered in these things, there'll be no real feeling for devotion. The Lord is Tvama Kinchana Gochara. He is the property of those who have nothing, Akinchana. Akinchana means those who are without the material possessions. Or you could say it in a way that most of the contemporary devotees would appreciate more. They're not possessed by material things. So they may have things, but they're not controlled by them. Which is also, that's an explanation, like the Pandavas. So many devotees, they have wealth and beauty and position, education, but they're not possessed by them. But that is not such an easy position to have. The more you have, the more you become possessed by the thing. There was like a song when, this is, anyway, my samskara for my upbringing. There's a song there. The more money we come across, the more problems we see. I'm not going to sing the song, but there was a song that's there like this. And it is also saying the world over, the more that has been produced, the more people have become crazy. It's like go to a Black Friday sale. And people are like literally attacking each other for the things. So anyway, you are the property of those who are without the material possessions, or they're not possessed by material things. But others who are possessed by these material things, they cannot feelingly call out to you. It's not possible. So if our desires to be made strong, then a life of simplicity, like with less things, and the strength of desire, they go well together. That's why you see the encouragement of simple living, and devotional scriptures and devotional communities, because that facilitates the increase of the spiritual thing. I was reading during the Bhagavatam reading for Bhakti Center we're on the first canto there. And Narada Muni has, associated with the sages. He achieved Satya Bhakti, love, bhava, and prema. And then the sages left. He wanted to go with them, but he was just a young boy and he had to care for his mother. So his mother could do nothing to protect him really, because she just a maid servant also. She didn't have much facility. But he was attached to her. Due to the bond of affection, there was attachment to her. So by arrangement of Krishna, or by providential arrangement, she was bit by a snake and she died. And Narada Muni says, I consider this to be the mercy of the Lord. So we were like, hold up. You're saying your mom dying is God's mercy? That's not a really good selling point. You're gonna have to so it could be read like that. So Prabhupada's purport, he goes on to explain that the mother is being taken there as basically symbolic of the material attachment, the attachment to the objects. Because he says, Sneha Pasham, I was tied by the rope of affection to my mother, which is natural. But taking her as a symbol of the material objects that we're attached, we do have Sneha Pasham. Our hearts are tied to the objects in many ways. So as a result, we're not able to cut the rope ourselves. If we were asked to cut the rope of affection ourselves, we will not cut it. Just like for for example, a simple example, if we were told that we could save the world by giving up our phones, who could do it? Who could do it right now? If the solution to many of the world's issues right now could be mitigated by giving up the cell phone, who in this world is prepared to do it? Even amongst the bhaktas, who is prepared? The sneha passion for the phone is very deep. You could get in your car, drive off, 2-3 miles. Oh, I forgot my phone. Drive back. Can't go anywhere without the phone. It's like another appendage to the body. That is how powerful the sneha pasham is. So we were asked to cut it ourselves. We will not do it. So the Supreme Lord will have to do it. Or you will see that I'm having the material fever is very high for the objects. On my own strength, I cannot bring the fever down. So the Lord makes an arrangement to bring the fever down. And he himself cuts the rope of affection. And with the cutting of the rope of affection, then your spiritual thing can fly away. Now it's been caged by the rope of affection. Now the cage has been opened by the Supreme Lord. Now the bird can freely fly. So this is how Prabhupada takes the purport there, which is very nice, because your mother being killed is God's mercy is not the best selling point. You don't really like use that in the public class. But this is a nice selling point there. So I'm saying this, that the embrace of difficulty for achieving a higher purpose is possible when the desire inside is strong. And the desire inside, to make it strong, to give it the fitness, not such an easy thing. So life is kept, one should keep life very simple, giving that desire a chance to be fueled. And of course, in Christian Bhakti, we also shouldn't desire by hearing Christian stories and, the philosophy of Christian consciousness, sadhana, sadhya, tattva, and so on. These things are also required, but also keeping life very strong. Otherwise, we get buried by the objects. The more we embrace, the more we're buried by it, then our desire will not be strong, then our tapasya will not be strong. And without the tapasya, you cannot get the Supreme Lord. So here the Lord says, this is also my desire. So why is it his desire that the living entities suffer these bodies, which are kleshada? That was the other question. So the answer is given very simply, that there are souls in this world who need bodies in order to pursue bhakti also, right? There are many sadhakas that have not achieved the goal of bhakti yet. So this is a very distinctly Gaudiya Acharya conviction, that the whole purpose of the Shrishti Leela, or the Leela of creation, the whole purpose of that is to give bodies to the sadhakas who have yet to attain sadhya bhakti. And they need bodies in order to do bhakti. So our body is not our enemy. The body is your friend, because without the body, how you can do sadhana bhakti? It's not possible. So it is the Lord's desire that there are bodies generated for these sadhakas to get bodies so they can pursue sadhya bhakti, or the goal of bhakti. So here, pritoham, I'm very pleased with this. Your desire is also my desire. So why would the Lord have desire for these bodies to be generated if the bodies are kleshada? Because the bodies are not only kleshada, they also are our potential to fulfill a prospect and transcendence, and without which you would not be able to fulfill whatsoever. Of course, here Narayana is not telling you all those details of Shrishti Leela. He's just saying your desire is also my desire, therefore may it happen, may it be blessed. So this is a very nice thing here. All right, we'll do a couple more verses here. I hope to finish it. Maybe we will. This desire for having children is not a low thing. So this next verse is spoken. Brahma bhavo bhavantascha manavo vibhuteshvara vibhutayo mamahyeta bhuta nambhutihetava. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, the Manus, all the other demigods in the higher planetary systems, and you Prajapatis, who are increasing the population, are working for the benefit of all living entities. Thus you, expansions of my marginal energy, vibhutaya mamaheta, they are vibhutis of the Lord, are incarnations of my various qualities. Here, one of the commentaries is finding this desire to have children is not a low thing. Or the desire to produce population is not a low thing. And so he's putting Daksha in the list of all these, I guess they're patriarchs, but the like the famous people of the universe, Brahma, Shiva, the Devatas, the Manus. They all do this work of producing children or increasing the population in the universe. So this is not a low-class person's work. Otherwise, someone may think like that. This guy is Daksha, he's expert in the sex life. Oh, this is low class. He's such a materialist. No, he's put amongst a list of exalted personalities who are all doing this work of increasing the population. As a sidebar, we were talking briefly yesterday, just in the evening time, how in all the old world cultures, increasing the population was always like a kind of preoccupation. You know, not only on a universal level, which we're hearing about now, but even on a local level on the earth, how to increase and maintain the population was always like an anxiety. And this is one of the reasons for the marriage institution. Because the marriage institution, like nowadays, the way we think about the marriage institution is about me and the person I fell in love with. But in the old world, it wasn't even about that. I mean, a lot of it was just like political and practical. But one of the major reasons for children. Because you need to, in order to maintain your civilization, you need to produce progeny. That's the only way it can be maintained. And you need to have at least 2 kids to maintain the population. And more than 2 kids if you want to increase it, but at least 2. And that was kind of, so it became like a preoccupation of the old world, how to have children. And now that I said, we were talking about this in contrast to like 2022, where people are like not interested in having kids or for various reasons, they're just not interested anymore. And they don't think it's a problem that that children aren't being produced. And that they actually think there's too much population. And there's sometimes, as Prabhupada speaks about in his books many times, people in power, they speak about depopulation because there isn't enough resources in the world. It's like more than enough, but not if you want to live like a demon. You want to live like a demon, a greedy fellow, then there's, even for one of you demons, it won't be enough. But you live like a proper life, there's more than enough. Actually, it's abundant. But everyone's living like demon now. So they talk about removing the population. So anyway, it's just an interesting sidebar there, but it is not a low thing to be concerned about the population production. You know, there should be living entities in order. Now, all living entities are living like fools and rascals. So I think that's a good case for not having the children. So that is the case that people pick up today. You know, they got a point there. If everyone's living like crazy, then it becomes a problem. Otherwise, this is not low person's work. So this verse is spoken in that regard. Some comment is coming here about the vibhuti. So, you know, there's the Lord's forms of Shuddha Sattva, and they come as avatars also there in the spiritual category. Then Shakti Avesh avatar, they're jivas, but they're empowered with Shakti from God. So they're called Shakti Avesh avatar. Then just below them, they're called as vibhutis. So they're like devatas, like Daksha, who have a certain power from God, but it is not Shakti from the spiritual world, it's Shakti in the material world. So they're called as vibhutis. So here he said, you are my vibhutis, and this work should go on in the material world. So you're amongst good company who are concerned with this particular work. All right, my time is almost up, 4 minutes. We'll do, the next verse, okay, the next 2 verses speaks about the form of worship on the path of karma, gyan, and bhakti. What is a form of divinity that karma yogis surrender to, the form of divinity that bhaktas surrender to, and the form of divinity that the jnani surrender to? That is mentioned in the next 2 verses. But I'm going to pause there because something's going on in the chat box maybe. Well, we've said a lot here, so it's already basically 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So we'll look at the questions really quick. We have one question here, I think it's Shamsaki. We read about Daksha Shiva and Sati pastime in the 4th canto, right? So these prayers in 6th canto are all before the lineages came into being? No, they're after. But the pastime of Daksha and Shiva happened in a different Manvantara. So you know how there are 14 Manvantaras in the day of Brahma. Manvantara means a ruling period of a Manu. So on one day of Lord Brahma, there are 14 Manus, right? And the period for which those Manus rule are called as a Manvantara period. So for example, in the 4th canto, we're hearing about the Manvantara period of Swayambhuva Manu and his ruling period. Then after Swayam Bhuva Manu, there are other Manus, ruling periods. There are Chakshusha, Manvantara, Vaishishta. There's so many Manus there. So when there's a change in administration of Manus, it seems that the period in which it happens is at a time of universal, not universal destruction, but half universal destruction, where half the universe is like flooded and wiped out and then repeated. So, because it's a day of Brahma, 14 Manus in a day of Brahma. So in the nighttime, there's a destruction, and then at the beginning of a new day, Brahma brings back the part of the universe that was destroyed. So Daksha Shiva Pasai happened in the first Manu period, Swayambhuva Manu. And this period is happening in like the 6th or 7th Manu period. We discussed it in one of the earlier, I believe, but I don't remember which Manu. So it is happening in a different Manu period. So that means there was partial destruction. And so there's need for, again, regeneration. So this, like this. It sounds kind of far out, but that is just how nature moves, just in generally speaking. So this is talking about the movement of nature on a macrocosmic level. So it sounds kind of far out. But just think about it on a microcosmic level. That is also how nature moves. That there is creation, there is sustenance for some time, and then there's destruction. And destruction is also necessary for regeneration, renewal, right? So, or say like in the seasons, springtime, and then summer, fall, and then winter, destruction, and then regeneration. So everything in nature moves like this. Not only gross physical nature, but also psychological nature moves like this as well, which is more fascinating for people. There's a creation, for example, like an identity. And I'll give a simple example. You have the identity of a child, an adolescent, and then that's maintained for some time. And then you get married. So the marriage is like a destruction period for that child mentality, because now you're entering into a new phase of life. And then from that destruction comes the renewal of the same you, but now the you as a wife or a husband. And then you're living as wife or husband for some time. So that's creation of a new identity. You're living for wife or husband for some time, and then children come. And that becomes like a destruction period of that. Now I'm not just a wife and husband, now I'm a mother and father. So it happens also in a psychological nature. When people do spiritual life, I was living like a gross demon, for some time, and then I became a devotee. So destruction of that identity and renewal of a new identity. So everything in the material world moves in this cycle. So now we're just hearing about it on a macrocosmic level. So it sounds very far out when you hear about it on that level, and like kind of unbelievable. But it's just the principle of how nature moves. So it's talking about macro. You can believe it or not believe it, but this is the movement of nature. So there's destruction during the period of previous Manu. Then when the new Brahma's day starts, then a new period of Manus emerges. And they're doing the generation of children. So is Daksha the only Prajapati, or are there specific progenitors for each universe? There are 9. I think we're going to hear about this at the end of this passage. There are several progenitors. So the work of creation is not one person's job. But there are so, like Kashyapa Muni, we heard about him in the 3rd canto. He is also a progenitor. There are many progenitors are there. So Daksha is just one of them. I have a little private message, or maybe you could see that, my bad. I usually stop sharing the screen before I pull this thing up. Yeah, just to the argument of why people are, not so into having children. They may argue that half the children are born are like retarded or in foster homes or homeless with no support. So then people say, why have the children like this? Now that is okay. So have the children properly. What about that argument? So we want to live like fools and rascals and demons. So we give these arguments instead of saying, well, why don't we live the proper life and do the responsible work? So anyway, so this is going on Kali Yuga. We want the enjoyment part without the responsibility part. So it becomes complicated if you want to do like that. That is demon life. That is the meaning of asura. And they want to enjoy it, they don't want the responsibility part. This is called Ardha Kukatanyaya, the logic of the half hen. So the hen that gives the golden egg, but you have to feed it. So you don't like the feeding part, but you like the golden egg part. So you chop off the head of the hen, but if you chop off the head of the hen, it doesn't produce the golden egg. So this is called the logic of the half hen. You want the golden egg part, but you don't want to feed it. So you want to enjoy it, but we don't want the responsibility part. So they give me all sorts of logic. The thing about logic is that you can basically establish anything as truthful with the logic, at least not prospectively. Whatever I'm looking for a word, it begins with a P. Like provisionally true. Provisionally, I think is it provision? Not provision. It's another word. It begins with a P. It's not provisional. Something like provisional. It sounds like provisional. I'm losing the word here. So with the logic, anything can sound reasonable enough if you use the logic in a certain way. So everyone's living like the demon. They're using logic in a certain way to say that now we should not have kids. But actually, you want the egg part, the enjoyment part, that you should have to feed it also. So we should live the proper life and not have the children. Anyway, having said that, I do get why people are really hesitant. Well, why would I want to bring a child into this crazy Kali Yuga period and this, that, and the other? That's okay. I think not intelligent people, they naturally think like this. The problem is that the less intelligent people, and there's a lot of those out there, they having a lot of kids. So then you have that's a big problem. If all the smart people don't have kids, because they're giving all the logic, and all the crazy dumb people, and no offense, with all due respect, but dumb. Like that is also part of nature. It's an aspect of nature. Everyone can't be beautiful like anything, intelligent like anything. There is no equality like that in the material world. That is not possible. So just as there's someone who's genius level, there are a lot of dummies out there also. And a lot of us hopefully fall somewhere in between. Not genius, but not completely stupid. So we can follow like regular principles and improve ourselves. But in Kali Yuga, the dumb department is increasing a lot because of technology specifically. So you're not, just the comfort of technology doesn't engage our intelligence anymore. So we're reducing. And it is quite visible at this point. So the dumb thing is increasing. And if only dumb people have the children, the smart people aren't having, then it's going to be a big imbalance in the society. So in this way, Kali Yuga will go on, and the suffering will continue. What does Jiva Goswami say about the material logic again? I don't know what he says, but Rupa Goswami says in the Nectar of Devotion, and he says that anyone, I can pull up the shloka, let me see if I can find it real quick. But he says, basically, you have to understand Shastra on the strength of your faith in scripture and logic that is informed by scripture. He said, but Kevala Yukti. So Kevala Yukti means dry logic. So dry logic means the logic that is used, not depending on Shastra. He said that logic is denied and as a valid pramanam in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, because on the strength of logic, you can establish any conclusion. And then someone who's a little bit better than you at logic, they'll defeat your point and establish your conclusion. And then someone who's better than him will defeat his point and establish their conclusion. So the logic is like that. So that is not accepted as pramana for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. The Kevala Yukti. There is Yukti, logic, and Bhakti also. When Rupa Goswami speaks about the Uttam Adhikaran, the sadhaka who has the best qualification for sadhana bhakti, he says Shastra Yukti Chanipuna, that he is expert in Shastra and Yukti. But that Yukti is a Yukti that is based on its taste for Bhakti Shastra. It is not the Kevala Yukti, dry logic, that is denied as pramana and Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So logic is like this. You can establish any conclusion with a fertile enough imagination, any conclusion can basically be established. So in this way, people are arguing with each other. Shamsaki says, regarding last verses you read, where Lord is assuring Daksha that his desire to bring about progeny aligns with the Lord's desire as well. We know that we get bodies based on our karma. So does Daksha know what kind of bodies to award when creating beings? I don't know how it works because I've never been in Prajapati. Well, maybe I have, but I don't remember. It seems that they probably have some sort of intuitive understanding of how to do their work after they're empowered to do so from within. But you'll hear about the Prajapatis in the Bhagavatam producing all various species of life. So from the Prajapatis will come all the various species, not just the human beings. Maybe from the Manus, they're called as progenitors of mankind. But from some of these other progenitors, they're producing other species of life also. I don't remember if that is true of Daksha. We might hear of that in the next chapters when he's producing the children. But they have empowerment to produce many of the different species of life. And then according to karma, souls will inhabit those various bodies. So I don't know how that works exactly. But, experientially, conceptually also, I'm not sure, but they seem to have intuitive powers how it might happen. I'm not a Prajapati, a material Prajapati. We left you as a Brahmachari. Well, I'm not a Brahmachari either in a strict sense of the term, but I'm not a Prajapati. But maybe in some last life, maybe we all were progenitors at some point. That would be interesting. Someone is telling me here in a private message that the religion of peace, let's call it Islam, they call it as a religion of peace as a pejorative, actually, because they do a lot of the terrorism, at least when a lot of terrorism is happening. So American terrorism doesn't count. But when they're doing it like terrorism, there was a group that called them as the religion of peace, because politically, for some time in the Western world, whenever there was a terrorist attack happening, they would say Islam is a religion of peace. That was like the major talking point. So people were like, but look, how you call it a religion of peace? So they use this phrase as a pejorative. So he says in the religion of peace, so that's Islam. They promote having more children. Yes. That is, sex life is meant for that also. I wouldn't say necessarily it's only meant for that. I could see there being arguments for it having a more social function and not just a propagation function. But the propagation function is a major function for any society, at least. This is the only reason why a society would care about your sex life. Actually, why would a society care about your sex life? They don't actually care about your sex life. They care about the propagative function of sex life because they need that for the civilization to continue. So you see in Islam, they're expanding everywhere. They're one of the fastest growing religions because of this program. One man, he will have 3-4 wives, and from each wife, he will produce 4 or 5 children. Now whether or not that's a good or bad thing, you decide. You can argue with that if you want, but that is what goes on in a lot of places. And even in some of their congregations, they preach like that. I saw, there was a year where I was really into Islam. I was investigating it because I came out of the ashram. I was trying to understand why there was so much hate in the West for Islam. So that time I spent some time like trying to understand a little bit more. Anyway, there are many sermons there. They preach to their congregations. You must have at least 5 children. And this way they are spreading the population. And you see like in the Europe, for example, people who are like more on the conservative side of things in Europe, they're, concerned that the host demographic, which is supposed to be European, is now being gradually being replaced by particularly like Islam, because they're having a lot of children. I'm like, well, yeah, no kidding, duh. If in the West y'all acting like atheists and sense enjoyers and you want to produce the children, what do you expect is going to happen? So then a new culture will be derived necessarily. So that's why I'm saying when a civilization actually likes their culture and they want to continue it, they'll be very concerned about the propagation function of sex because they want their culture to continue. If they like their culture, they want it to continue, so they're going to be concerned we have to have children. But now people in the Western world especially, they become very anti-West. At least in America, in the USA, very prominent. They're very anti-West. We have such a history of this, that, and the other. I'm like, sweetie, everyone's history is out of control. Why are you blaming the West? Dude, everyone's history is out of control. But somehow, maybe because of the education system, I don't know what all the factors are, but the West has become very anti-West. So as part of that mentality, they're not producing the children. They don't care to see their culture continue. So as a result, their culture will not continue. That's just how that works. It's like a nature thing, actually. That's just how that works. Whereas in Islam, they like their culture. You know, you pray 5 times a day. Maybe they're not like pure devotees or something, but they like their culture. They hold their culture. They say, have the children. You have 5 at least from each wife. And then that way when the kids are gone, they bring them up in their culture very strictly. You're not allowed to leave also. In Islam, they're very strict rule against apostasy. If you're an apostate means when you leave a religion. So in Islam, you know, in a lot of the Islamic countries, the punishment for apostasy is death. So that is Haridas Thakur, that's his story in Chaitanya Bhagavat. He's Muslim descent, but he's chanting Hare Krishna. So they said, give up this Hare Krishna, we'll kill you. So that's the law of apostasy. Apostasy is a little hard word for you to say. So they very strictly raised in the culture, you can't leave us. So that culture will continue. And the West are very like, we have a history of oppression. Okay, you don't like, they won't continue. Naturally, that is the flow of it. So very interesting. I got another private message. We love you as a cool black man with a cool hat and cool glasses. See how my friends, they play with me. They say, they mean it though, but they come on with me. Quran also condemns contraceptives. Yeah, this is similar to our Vedic scriptures. So I guess there is some sacredness and sense of responsibility when deciding to have children. Obviously, children are precious. And like I said, just practically speaking, they're required, you know, for continuing the human race at the very bare minimum. And if you like a particular culture, for continuing your particular culture. So it's important. Yeah, I mean, sex for procreation, not recreation. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here. We'll try to finish this passage tomorrow. I had hoped to finish it today, but we were talking here and there. If there's not anything else that is to say, we can stop here for now. Okay. All right. Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. I'll see you all tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go Permanenti. Hari Hari Bo. Later. Hare Krishna.